Hi guys, welcome back. It's Charlotte here, and today I'm going to watch Loki episode 5. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in this episode after the crazy developments of last week. I'm really hoping to see Mobius again now that we know that pruned people are not actually dead. I'm pretty sure we will see him in this episode. I'm also pretty sure that we will see a lot of Loki variants. What I'm not sure about yet is which Lokis are variants. I'm pretty sure where we've seen Old Loki, Kid Loki, even Crocki. That's my name for the alligator. I don't care. I know he's an alligator. I'll just call him Crocki. The name Crocki is too perfect. I'm not changing this name. I don't care if he's an alligator or if she's an alligator, for all we know. I'm pretty sure President Loki will be a variant for me. That's a given. The one Loki I might have a doubt about is the Avengers Loki, the one in the Stark Tower. By the way, I apologize in advance for my reaction if we see this Loki, because this is my favorite costume ever and I just can't wait to see that scene. I've been so excited about that scene ever since I saw it in the trailer, the very first trailer, so that was in December. And I think we're getting to see him in this episode. We already got 6 hours of Loki, almost Loki in every scene with this series, and now we're actually getting more than one Loki. We're getting multiple Lokis played by multiple Tom Hiddleston. What could be better than this, really? Okay, so let's go. What a weird shot. This is making me sick. Hair flip already.
What is this place? Where are we? Who are you?
That looked just like the magical cavern monster in Aladdin. What the hell? So it's a beast that feeds on variants. This is just getting weirder and weirder and I'm loving it.
Help you if you trust me.
Did I really hear that? If you trust me? Yeah, sure. She's going to trust you.
To me? What the hell is going on? It's been a very Fine. What about causing a Nexus event? It doesn't care what happens here. Surely there's something to do.
Did you see that little eye thing that Crocki did?
I could easily get us. Fine. What?
I love that little thing he did with his eye. Like that was hilarious.
What about causing a Nexus event? What was your Nexus event, Your Majesty?
I killed Thor.
Oh. Yeah, what do you say to that? Was that a little Thor in the jar?
Find Loki. Find the man behind the curtain. We'll kill him. Together.
At this point, Sylvie really seems more interested in finding the mind behind the curtain than finding Loki, whereas he's really thinking about her. So I still think it's a bit of a one-sided thing.
Fine. She took my temper.
If you trust me, she said.
You're going on the run, are you? Do you have any good memories? Just one, really.
Which one is that? She's going to prune herself. Yeah. Okay, so maybe she was actually talking about that Nexus event with Loki on Lamentis, if she said just one and then she pruned herself to join him. So maybe she does care more than I thought.
Even the mad Titan believed it. After I faked my death, I simply drifted in space. I got lonely. To tell you the truth, I missed my brother. I don't know if he missed me, if anybody else did. Humans have but one part to play.
To be alone forever. This is a bit like The Walking Dead meets Lost.
Shut the door, we still got a little bit of a situation here. By the way,
Yeah.
be careful just jumping into a stranger's car like that.
President Loki.
You let the wolves to our door. Shelter and supplies. You keep your army and I take the throne.
Yes, not so good a bargain. About that. Witted, half-faced scrubs.
Oh,
By the way, you did some annihilating too.
I did what I had to do.
Yeah,
not wrong.
so did I.
While he's busy with that, we can sneak around the back
And something.
You're alive.
What happened? You okay? Lokius.
Enchanted. Insane as what? Paper cutting a giant cloud to death.
Listen, I've been down here a bit longer than you. I know
I'm
a thing or
going to
two.
enchant it.
She's pretty confident.
I love how they're already back to bickering and competing for who has the better plan. And as usual, it's Sylvie who has the better plan, right? And we did get robbed of hugs. When is Loki ever gonna get a hug from anyone? If even Mobius and Sylvie reappearing together after he thought they were dead or lost, and he can't even get a hug. But to be fair, he was the one who stopped. It's his fault.
Founding of the TVA. Everything from the beginning of time. Okay. Right away, Mayor.
Why that little smile? I'm really intrigued by her. I don't know what she's trying to do. I have no idea what game she's playing.
You really don't remember him?
The rest of a lot of Lokis, but
No?
okay.
He's green, isn't he?
Could be lying for a long time. Of course, that just makes him more like it's cold.
You want your hug. She's not getting the message.
Theory.
Oh, so he did tell her.
I don't mean that it wasn't,
That little look, just to check. She's so cute and she's just as confused as he is. What the hell are these things? I thought they were peacocks at first, but... No, you need a hug. Yes. Yes! Yes! Don't they look awesome? Yeah. One selfless act. Did she succeed? Oh. Wow, that's some magic. Okay, so that was very different from last week. Last week was very emotional. This one was less emotional, a lot more comedy and very, very weird stuff, but very good, I thought. It was brilliant, in fact, the way they integrated Kid Loki and old Loki. Okay, so I'll just have to think about this a little bit and then come back with something resembling a review or an analysis. Right now my thoughts are just too confused. Hi again, so I've sorted out my thoughts about this episode and I guess I will try to give you a quick review, a bit of analysis and a few theories to finish. So again, I love this episode. I think I'm just running out of adjectives to qualify this show. It's just so good. Every week it's very different. Each episode has a very different tone, a very different atmosphere, and yet they all fit in the same story and it's brilliant. This one has been so confusing and chaotic. I actually still feel chaotic after watching it, even though it was several hours ago. And I was pretty happy, in fact, because this episode gave me several of the things that I was hoping to see in the series. I talked about them in a video before the series started a few weeks ago. Among these things I wanted to see were Kid Loki and Old Loki, and they were both in this episode, and I thought they were both great. Kid Loki was actually really cute, and I loved the fact that they made him the king out of all the variants. That was quite creative and quite funny, quite unexpected, in fact. I also loved the way he delivered that line, "I killed Thor." It completely took me by surprise, and the way it was written, the comedic timing and the way he delivered that line, it was just so matter of fact, and it really took me by surprise. And the reaction of the other Loki was priceless too, so I really loved that. And regarding Old Loki, I've been saying from the start, ever since we heard that Richard E. Grant had been cast in an unknown role for the series, I've been saying from the start that he was perfect for that role and he could not play anything else that would not have made sense. And I stand by this statement after seeing his performance. He was perfect. And it was even more amazing when you see the kind of costume that he was wearing. They actually made him wear that ridiculous costume from the comics. And somehow he still managed to be moving to make me take him seriously at the end. So that was really amazing. Well done. I was also very pleased to see that Crocki, who kind of became an internet phenomenon since he appeared last week at the end of the episode, I was happy to see that he was given so much screen time, actually. I did not expect that. He was almost a major character in this episode. Was mostly used for comic relief, but I love the fact that they pretended to take him seriously in a way. That was really cool. And he actually turned out to be a much bigger character than President Loki. Who would have thought? And finally, I loved the fact that this world is full of Lokis and that basically they're stuck in a kind of endless loop of betrayal and double-crossing each other. And also the fact that our poor TVA Loki just cannot take it. Like being stuck in a world that is populated by a multitude of other Lokis is just horrible. It's like being in one of the circles of hell for him, and that was both very clever and really hilarious. Now, I'm sure some people will be disappointed that President Loki, who was teased in the trailers, he was really shown quite prominently in the trailers, they will probably be disappointed that he got so little screen time and he just did not play a big part in the end. There was not even a narrative connected to President Loki, so it was just like a nod to the comics, but nothing more. But in a way, I really like the way the show has been using misdirection with the trailers. They're always taking us by surprise, and I really like that. I mean, I know it is a dangerous game to play because you can disappoint people when you put things in trailers and you create expectations and then you disappoint them, or you actually do something else. And so far, they've actually been quite good at shutting down some theories, probably to try and avoid the WandaVision effect, I would say. When something that is not central to the show takes a life of its own, is given way too much importance, then people create expectations, and then they are disappointed, even though these things were never meant to be there in the first place. So it kind of creates expectations and then disappoints people, even though the show itself was actually very good. So I think there was a deliberate attempt from the team of Loki to shut down some of the theories. Like, for instance, they stated very early on that the stained glass in the church was not meant to represent Mephisto, so they've learned their lessons. But at the same time, they did keep the trailers very mysterious, and very often the theories that we made or the expectations that we had from the trailers were actually untrue. For example, I'm thinking of the big timeline in chaos thing that they presented as a kind of major plot point in the trailers. They kind of set it up to be something big, and in fact it turned out to be just a diversion from Sylvie to try and get into the TVA, and it was probably fixed by the TVA agent in a matter of hours, and we did not even get to see how they fixed it, so it was actually not very important. All we saw was that by episode 4, or maybe even episode 3, the timeline was actually fixed. We saw it on the monitor, it was just back to normal. So that was not a big plot point, even though the trailer suggested otherwise. Another thing was DB Cooper, for example. I think a lot of people, me included, expected DB Cooper to be a Loki variant, or maybe to be Loki trying to escape from the TVA. at the end of the series maybe, and in fact it was in the very first episode, and it was a flashback from Loki's real past. And now we see that President Loki, well, he was just kind of a fun cameo, and he did not really have any real impact on the story. Now, I love the fact that this episode was so meta, especially in the way it dealt with Loki's death in Infinity War and his use or non-use of magic. I said in the 7 things I would like to see in the Loki series that I would like an explanation on Loki's Infinity War death. Like many other fans, I felt there was unfinished business with that scene. There were things that did not really make sense or that did not seem to be in character for Loki. And well, they did not really do that. They did not really give an explanation, but I kind of felt like the scene in which old Loki referenced that moment actually kind of filled that gap. It was very meta because it made sense within the story, but it also addressed 2 of the biggest complaints that fans have been voicing about Loki. 1, how could he attack Thanos with a puny dagger? And 2, why doesn't he use his magic more? Both in this scene and in the MCU in general. So it was a nice nod to the fans and their comments on MCU Loki and on Infinity War in particular. But it also made a very interesting point, I think. Personally, I really like the theory that Loki doesn't use his magic much because he was raised in the warrior culture in Asgard, and that this culture despises magic tricks. It values manly behavior and strength and brute force, and not necessarily magic. Magic is more for women, and well, actually it was Frigga who taught him magic. It was a woman. And also the way she justifies teaching him magic, it's in a deleted scene, but it's still interesting in Thor: The Dark World. She explains that basically she did that so that he would have something of his own that he was good at, because obviously he was never going to be as strong as Thor. So in a way it is a bit of a kind of second best, like a consolation prize. It's not the real thing, it's not what he aspires to. So I think, since Loki is very concerned with what people think of him and getting their respect, he might actually inhibit his true powers and his true potential in an attempt to demonstrate that he can actually fight in the traditional way. Here they were not that specific, but they did hint at a very similar idea, in fact, which is that Loki gets in his own way, as Tom Hiddleston would say, and inhibits his own potential by using daggers instead of magic, which is his true talent. And I suppose it's not a stretch to connect this to the idea of self-acceptance. Again, Loki needs to recognize that to realize his full power, he needs to embrace his identity as a sorcerer and not try to fight with traditional weapons as Thor would do, for example. And this idea was alluded to again at the end of episode 5, when Loki commented after witnesses old Loki's really impressive magical powers and his illusions. I think we're stronger than we realize. And one last remark on this topic. I think it is not by chance that, again, this tendency to be his own worst enemy in a way, or to self-sabotage, is symbolized by the dagger. So here in episode 5 we have old Loki pointing out that by using daggers, Loki is preventing the emergence of his true powers, which lie in his magic. And in episode 3 we had the dagger metaphor, love is a dagger, which revealed that Loki's vision of love was based on narcissism. Remember the line, it was, "You can see yourself in it, it's beautiful." And of course this kind of love is an illusion, like the dagger itself, in fact, was an illusion. So here again, the dagger symbolizes a barrier on Loki's path to growth and self-awareness. And I don't think this is by chance. I think this is deliberate. And I also wonder if this could be connected to the fact that Kid Loki gave Loki a sword at the end of episode 5. Because this sword is going to replace the dagger as Loki's weapon. But it's also a magic sword. So in a way, it's a synthesis between the dagger and the magic. So maybe it symbolizes Loki's ability to accept himself in his entirety, to reconcile the kind of fake, idealized self that he likes to present to the public. That would be symbolized by the dagger. And his true self, his real identity deep down, that he tends to hide from the world which is symbolized by the magic. So that's just my interpretation. So now we come to the question of this maybe romantic, maybe not romantic relationship between Loki and Sylvie, and this very awkward interaction that they had in the middle of the episode. I really love the awkwardness in this scene, to be honest. I did not find it cringy. You kind of felt bad for Loki because he was just not very good at trying to seduce Sylvie, I guess. I loved the way both actors used these little sneaky, sideways looks at each other to try and spy on each other's reaction without the other noticing. That was really cute, and clearly both of them are quite confused as to how they feel about the other, but also how the other feels about them. So I'm constantly reassessing my understanding of the Loki-Sylvie relationship with each new episode. After episode 4, I was unsure whether Mobius was right or wrong to think that Loki's love for Sylvie was narcissistic in nature, and basically an illusion. Loki himself seemed really confused about his own feelings, and Sylvie even more. Regarding Loki, I'd say his attitude was actually a lot clearer. He's clearly trying to woo her or flirt with her in a not at all subtle way, oh, it's getting cold, oh, I have a blanket, do you want one, or do you want to come and cuddle with me? To me, it's pretty clear how he sees the relationship, at least at this specific moment. He clearly thinks that he's in love with Sylvie, and he's trying to see if she feels the same about him. So I'm pretty convinced that Loki is in fact in love with Sylvie, and that he has understood that she was her own person. So I think at this point he's really not confused anymore, and he has already grown past the narcissistic element that there was at first in their relationship, and he has given up trying to see himself in her as if looking in a mirror. I think he probably realized that at the very moment of the Nexus event on Lamentis, in fact. There is a self-love dimension too, but it has to do with Sylvie showing him that you can be a Loki and still escape the determinism that he believed was in his nature, that he was condemned to grab for power and always fail at grabbing power. But it's not about falling in love with himself, it's more complicated than that. When he recognized that Sylvie was not just a faded photocopy of him, but her own person, and he told her she was amazing, I think he already left behind the illusion of narcissistic love. Mobius probably did not realize that and assumed that Loki was still stuck in his old way of functioning, but I'd say he was probably wrong. In episode 5, we see that Loki has already grown. He does give signs that he has given up on his glorious purpose of becoming a king, so now he can see that ruling would probably not make him happy. He makes a joke about this. Probably that what would make him happy is to find love of any kind, whether it's romantic, platonic, brotherly, any kind of love, but not being alone anymore. So I would argue now that Loki is in love with Sylvie, that it is no longer an unhealthy kind of love. I was more confused about Sylvie during this episode, but I have come to think that she too might be in love with Loki in fact, but she cannot yet acknowledge it. She's still clinging to her own glorious purpose, which is to destroy the TVA, and she still has trust issues. And we see that when she anxiously asks Loki if she can really trust him not to betray her. I think there are indications that she does have feelings for Loki, but she has no clue how to deal with them, how to express them, and for the moment her barriers have not come down yet. And she probably uses her mission to avoid having to face her feelings. We've seen some signs that she might be in denial, especially when her voice cracks in that scene.
Well, there are more important things, right?
Right? Yeah, like bringing down the TVA.
And although she remained too guarded to respond to Loki's attempts to get closer to her, she has been making progress too. She had the opposite problem compared to Loki. She completely refused to see any connection between them. She rejected any association with other Lokis, and she was very much a loner who trusted no one, because she'd never had any opportunity to forge relationships. But her statement that Loki and herself are the same at the end is an indication that she has made progress. Loki started thinking they were the same and had to acknowledge they were also different, and Sylvie started thinking they were completely different and came to recognize that they did actually have some similarities. So they had a kind of mirror evolution. So at this point, really, I don't know what direction they will choose. And as often I will just say, I'm fine with anything, as long as it's done well. I don't really care much about what they do, I really care about how they do it. Now, a few quick remarks, just random thoughts. Old Loki's story of how he used illusions to trick Thanos and escape death really got my mind racing, because I immediately thought, what if Old Loki's trick is in fact what truly happened on the sacred timeline, I mean? What if Loki was never meant to die? What if the TVA was fooled as well? Or maybe they were not fooled, but they chose to cut that file that they showed Loki, it said end of file. But what if it was not the end of the file? Maybe the TVA cut that file so that Loki would think that he had no hope whatsoever on the sacred timeline, since all that awaited him there was death. That could be a possibility, this end of file mentioned at the end of the film that they showed him. They edited that, so how far can we trust them? I was glad to see that they are confirming my analysis of Loki and Sylvie having different attitudes to planning. This episode was a perfect demonstration of what I said. In fact, Loki likes to think of himself as a planner, but in fact he's not much of a planner. He does not even really know what a plan is. You can see that in action. Him devising a plan, making fun of the other Lokis for not making plans, but in fact when he tries to come up with a plan, everyone makes fun of him in turn because it's not really a plan. And Sylvie, on the other hand, comes with a plan that might be qualified as a little chaotic, because saying let's go back to the big cloud that eats people is kind of a chaotic Loki thing to do, really. But it's also much more of a true plan, and as she says herself, a real plan actually does have multiple steps, and her plan has multiple steps. So once again we get the demonstration that they're not the same, they have different ways of functioning. Sylvie is a planner, Loki likes to think he is a planner, but he's not. Now for a very important point, I'm so glad that Loki finally got a hug, finally. It just doesn't make sense to me that he never gets any hugs, he's just very huggable. When he gives the puppy eyes. I mean, some people might be impervious to this, but I'm sure it doesn't make sense for everyone to resist this. So he finally did get his hug. I'm just a bit sad that Mobius is gone back to the TVA, because that means we might see less of him in the finale, and I don't like it when we don't see Mobius much. I miss him. He's such a great character. And now to finish, I'm going to get a bit more into theories and what might come in the finale. And as you may have noticed, I still did not get to see the one and only my beloved Loki in Avengers costume. He was still not in this episode, so that means they kept him for the finale, and that makes sense because, you keep the best things last, right? So the fact that we did not see him in this episode, that was kind of devoted to all the Loki variants, makes me think that maybe he's not just another random variant like President Loki or Kid Loki or Loki, Crocki and all the others. Why do I think that? Because, well, clearly Sylvie and Loki are going to get past this guard dog, as they call it, in the next episode, and I expect they're going to finally meet the real big bad. So for the moment I haven't had time to think about it much, but I have two ideas. It could be our Loki, it could be TVA Loki, who might have changed back into his usual appearance. Sylvie did mention wanting a change of clothes, so maybe he'll want that too. Or it could be that this Loki is in fact the real bad guy of the story, the man behind the TVA. I'm not sure how that would connect to the story, or if that's even possible, or what his motivations would be for destroying all the other Lokis and trying to keep people on one timeline. I would have to think about this more, but to me it's a possibility. I was probably wrong to declare that the theory of a Loki being behind the TVA was dead. I thought that when I saw Richard E. Grant as classic Loki and as someone who had already been pruned. But after giving it more thought and reading other people's takes on Twitter and elsewhere, I still think it's a real possibility. And again, I'm going to reference Agent of Asgard. In that story, the big bad is old Loki, or King Loki, who looks very much like Richard E. Grant, in fact, but with a costume that is slightly less ridiculous. And this character is basically Loki at the end of his journey to full-on villainy. He's evil Loki. He has become the god of evil. And this evil Loki tries to prevent a younger version of Loki from breaking out of the infernal cycle in which he is stuck. The younger Loki wants to escape this narrative path that he is destined to follow over and over and over again. But evil Loki does not want this to happen. He does not want to let him escape that cycle. So, of course, we know they are simply drawing inspirations here and there, creating something new out of it, as they did with Sylvie. They took several elements from several comics. But this story really seems to be awfully close to the main themes of the series, if you ask me. This idea of Loki trying to break out of this cycle and reinvent himself, not stick to the role that he has been forced to play. So it could be that behind the TVA we have a Loki. It could be Avengers Loki, the one we saw in the trailers, or it could be another Richard E. Grant Loki. Why not? We saw several Lokis played by Tom Hiddleston. Why would Richard E. Grant not be able to play two versions of old Loki? One that was rather nice, the one we met in episode 5, and maybe another one that is very evil. He would definitely be able to play that. Or it could still be Kang, but really I think I like the Loki theory a lot more, because the show is called Loki. It's a show about Loki and about identity, so it would make so much sense for the big bad to be a Loki as well. It would just go full circle. It would work so well, and it would also deliver another very interesting message about how Loki is his own worst enemy, which has been a major theme throughout the series. So that's it for today. I can't believe we have only one episode left. I don't know how it went by so quickly. It seems like it started only yesterday and it's already over. But I'm pretty confident that we will get a season 2, really. So we'll just have to wait for it. But I'm pretty sure it's coming because the show has been so good and the reception has been very good as well. So I'm almost certain that season 2 will happen. So I'll see you next week for the big season finale. Bye bye.